The sudden release of what can only be described as a magical image creator by ChatGPT has left the world stunned. Art styles that were once unattainable unless you spent years of your life practicing and becoming an expert are suddenly now available to everybody in just a couple of questions. The phenomenon called the Ghiblification of everything has let users simply turn all their photos into Studio Ghibli-like images that highlight this new technology's playfulness and really enjoyable moments, but also its darker side. Underneath this novelty lies lots of legal, economic and cultural questions that need answering. In today's episode, I'll discuss the Ghiblification of everything. I'll explain how the model works, and I'll dissect some of the different ways I can see the creative industries and everyday people's lives being impacted. This is In the Loop with Jack Horton. Thanks for listening and enjoy the show. So OpenAI recently announced a significant update to ChatGPT. So it integrated one of probably the more advanced image generation models directly into GPT-4 as an interface, and damn, it's good. I think we can all say, or those that have tried it anyway, that this has been so amazing. It's probably the first wow moment in AI in a long, long time that I've personally experienced. I've actually spent hours shamefully taking photos of friends and pets and asking it just to turn them into a soldier from World War II or a 1970s hippie, to the point that it actually stopped me making any more images. Clearly, I'd asked for too many to be created. But what the new image generator in GPT-4 really sparked was this Ghiblification of everything. So social media, it feels like everywhere, has just been flooded with Studio Ghibli's iconic animation style, and really, it could have been pulled straight from Spirited Away. And what set this apart from earlier AI and different trends that we've seen over the years is just how easy it is to do. You can now just upload an image into GPT and say, create this, but in the Studio Ghibli style. And it obviously has gone viral. Even Sam Altman, OpenAI's CEO, actually changed his Twitter profile to a Ghibli-style portrait. But beneath all of this fun, and I've certainly had a lot of fun, this trend really reveals very deep tensions that are going to start emerging between this idea of imitation, creativity, automation, and loopholes in the law. So you might be wondering what's actually been done differently to enable people to suddenly create Studio Ghibli-like images. Let's dig into that. Previously, generating an image was a two-step process. You might type a prompt into ChatGPT, get a prompt to describe an image, then need a separate tool like DALL or Midjourney to actually finalize it. It was a bit of a pain. And GPT's new model merges everything into one interface, makes it super simple, and you can just refine and iterate on images you get back. This represents what most people think is a bit of a departure from the prior diffusion-based methods of generating images. GPT-4, like its predecessors like DALL and diffusion-based models of Midjourney and Stable Diffusion, don't just rely on denoising kind of random pixels, which basically means that platforms like the older platforms, they created images by starting with lots of different pixels and then very slowly clearing them up, which eventually match your prompt. It's, if you've seen that old school TV with lots of black and white, it's almost starting there and slowly iterating down to your final images. So GPT-4 works a little bit differently. Instead of starting with noise, it actually builds an image step by step, which is more like writing a sentence. So it makes it much better at, say, following instructions, especially for things like getting text exactly right in an image, which previously it's been rubbish at. Also lets you have a back and forth. So you can say, add a hat, make the lighting softer, or change the text, and it'll immediately update the image without losing any of that style or forgetting what it made earlier. Now, people think that it uses an auto-regressive architecture, which basically is what builds that image up step by step by step. Another really important new feature is that multi-turn refinement. So you can ask it to redraw parts of an image. You can use your finger on a phone to highlight a part of an image that it needs to redo, and it will remember the style and structure of the previous image. This conversational image generation just feels like you're directing a person more than just simply giving it a prompt and hoping for the best. Another new feature is the ability to reference actual images. So again, that Studio Ghibli aspect. But also you could provide an example of maybe a picture of your front room and say, use this shot, rearrange it in a Scandinavian style with a massive window and move those chairs about so it's in the corner and not in the middle of the room. So as you can imagine, this image is going to be incredible for interior design mock-ups or storyboarding, even product prototypes. Another really cool feature is the text rendering improvements, because anyone that's used these types of platforms previously will know that text is awful. Diffusion-based models tended to produce almost incomprehensible text because of that noise-based approach, so starting with all those pixels and whittling its way down to a final image. Whereas GPT's new model is much better at rendering those entire sentences or paragraphs. So it means you can make infographics, signs, a t-shirt, speech bubbles with cartoons, quite literally as many things you can think of, which obviously opens up a lot of commercial uses, from quick brand mock-ups to flyers to social media posts, with very minimal editing and back and forth. So all these new features have obviously created an explosion of new use cases. Marketing agencies can generate full campaign mock-ups, and if you're selling products, you can suddenly have product images that look exactly like your product in a limited amount of backgrounds. Families and friends like myself can turn all the photos into funny, whether it's Studio Ghibli pictures or make someone look like they're in the war. Educators maybe even could bring to life historical events, or even make scientific diagrams they've drawn on a piece of paper suddenly just come to life as a digital asset. This has definitely brought back a new level of magic for AI. It's just suddenly fun to make new things, send photos in, and not really have to work hard to get a good output. As a result of it being so good, it's going to have a massive impact on the world. So, if we use the Studio Ghibli example as a kind of case study to explore the maybe legal and ethical and cultural implications of this new technology. So Studio Ghibli's art is deeply personal to Miyazaki and the studio. Miyazaki which is the co-founder of Studio Ghibli, has actually called AI art itself an insult to life itself. His studio's films are handcrafted, complex, philosophical. They take many, many years. He himself still draws every single day. They are the antithesis of automation. So when thousands of AI-generated images are circulating in his name, as you can imagine, many people, are not in love with this. They're actually feeling quite uncomfortable, because it's not just about aesthetics. It's actually just authenticity. These AI images aren't reinterpretations by new artists who are paying tribute. They're generated by AI, and they are imitations. And very likely they're trained on thousands of frames from actual Studio Ghibli films. So obviously it's left many people feeling quite uncomfortable. But meanwhile, many people have also defended it, because to them, Ghiblification of all these photos is no different than remix culture or cosplay, which is just this fun, enjoyable part of participatory art. And you could argue that letting people reimagine their dogs as a Ghibli character or recreating a wedding photo democratizes creativity. It brings that professional quality tool to every single person in the world. And crucially, many of the AI outputs aren't monetized. They were shared just for fun, so they weren't making anybody money. But culture doesn't exist in this, legal vacuum. And therefore, this is where the legal grey zone starts to come in. The heart of the debate really comes down to the fact that style isn't protected under any copyright law. So copyright protects expressions, not ideas or styles, which basically means that you can't copyright a Ghibli look. You can only copyright specific images or scenes or characters in a Ghibli film. So an AI-generated image that mimics an aesthetic of Ghibli films isn't automatically illegal unless it starts to reproduce those protected elements of the film. But drawing that line's really hard. Generative models aren't probabilistic. They don't copy in that traditional sense. They interpolate across learned data. And research has shown that image models can output near duplications of training images under certain conditions. So if a user asks for this photo of my friend in the style of Ghibli, and the result mirrors a frame from, say, Princess Mononoke, is that fair use, or is that now infringement? And some legal experts argue that if the output includes a substantially similar element, so a copyrighted character, a unique composition, or like a very recognizable scene, it could count as derivative of that work, which therefore would require some permission. However, many people have countered that type of argument, saying that AI models are just completely transformative, and therefore all of its use falls under fair use. And there's been no resolution by courts yet. So what makes this Ghibli case especially difficult is the likely use of Ghibli's work as training data. And AI models like GPT are trained on billions of images. Many are scraped from the public web without any consent. And neither OpenAI nor Google has disclosed exactly what art or media they've ever used. But you could bet a lot of money that Ghibli frames, which are very widely available online, were definitely part of that data set. The model's uncanny stylistic accuracy within a single prompt is pretty hard to explain otherwise. So when I go through it like that, it seems like Studio Ghibli should have a good leg to stand on, but this is where copyright law meets Gen AI, because it's really not that clean cut, and it may never be. A number of high-profile legal cases are testing whether this kind of training is even lawful. So Carla Oritz, Sarah Anderson, Kelly McKernan, all suing Stability AI, Midjourney, and a load of others in a class action lawsuit for using their content, their art, in training data. Because the core argument is that training on copyrighted art without any permission is infringement, and enabling users to generate just quick, simple outputs using their art adds that layer of liability. And so far, the case is allowed to proceed, so it's not been chucked out on that key copyright and false endorsement claim. Another case is where Getty Images is suing Stability AI for scraping 12 million images from its database. And Getty's seeking about $2 billion in damages and calls the training pure theft. All these cases really matter because they'll set a precedent. If courts decide that using copyrighted images or training violates copyright law, or that prompting an AI with "in the style of X" implies this false endorsement, then the current practice of style imitation could face massive constraints. And right now, many AI companies rely on that defense of fair use, arguing that their models don't store or regurgitate exact images and that the training is a form of transformative learning. But if judges disagree, then future models will be forced to license data or offer opt-outs to artists. And by the way, if this happens, it could start to spell the beginning of the end of how large language models are going to be scaled. This is an existential threat to how large language models are even built. So you might ask yourself, what's going to change then? Well, pressure is really mounting from a lot of the creative community for studios to start to defend their legacy. And a lot of the AI labs and developers are trying to self-regulate. You know, OpenAI, for instance, says it will try to prompt a filter to essentially stop people mimicking artists that are currently alive. But for them, studio styles like, say, Ghibli's is completely fair game. So this leaves us in a bit of a legal and cultural limbo. So if the court sides with, say, artists, we will start to see studios getting paid lots of money for training data. But then they'll also start having to credit the artists that produced that work. But if not, style theft, as many people have been calling the Ghiblification of everything, will just become normalized, and artists will just need to find a new way to distinguish themselves in the world where AI can basically steal all of their style. So what's going to be the impact on, say, businesses and people? Well, I think studios, agencies, and production companies will see these types of tools as this, super amazing, fast way to produce concept art or background layouts or simple animations. Because these models can generate dozens of versions within minutes, explode creativity, which is obviously a huge time saver and cost saver. But obviously, in many cases, it's going to be junior artists and, say, production assistants that will feel the brunt. Instead of hiring a team of, early career newcomers to produce rough sketches or help with in-between animation frames, some firms will just cut people out and use AI instead. Freelance illustrators and animators are going to be under a lot of pressure because companies were probably willing to pay a lot of money in commission for human-made art in children's books or shows, even for a marketing or even a concept art, just to kind of get funding for something. But suddenly these tools will just do all the heavy lifting. So for many of those in the creative industry, they have to start to really embrace I am an AI user. Pay me because I'm going to do twice the work in half the time. And a lot of people are adapting these and incorporating these tools into their workflows, using AI to create lots of thumbnail sketches or different styles. And essentially they kind of become expert curators as well as creators. And the same goes for influencers. Many people will just be replaced by GPT influencers, basically fake accounts generating fake images that look almost identical, and people follow because that fake influencer is representing a lifestyle that others really would love to live themselves. The speed of these developments have just forced many people to adapt quite quick. Hollywood unions such as, the Animation Guild are pushing for contract clauses that require studios to kind of consult with humans before using the AI systems. Because obviously you would fear that using unsupervised AI would just completely erode any point in hiring people or any form of artistic integrity. And that debate over ethics and fair compensation is going to start to get quite hot, because artists who, say, fear losing control of their own work will start to advocate for very strict rules on how content is used to train AI. So in conclusion, from a legal standpoint, a lot of copyright is now being challenged in ways that nobody would have ever anticipated. Courts and lawmakers are going to really struggle to decide who, if anyone, can, say, claim ownership over an image, what fair use constitutes, and the future of Gen AI, including the viability of small research labs, will hinge on whether training data can actually be used without paying huge amounts of money. Economically, entire sectors are going to face huge transformation. Studios are going to have to retool production lines to incorporate AI for, say, concept art or background art. Freelancers will see those opportunities for faster turnaround of their work, but also a huge amount of threat for job displacement. And culturally, the surge of formulaic, instantly generated art could lead to this horrible homogenization where we just have the mass replication of style or aesthetic based on previously created works rather than new innovative thinking. On the flip side, it could make us more inventive, more creative. It could help push us to forge new styles that are so original that even an advanced model couldn't easily replicate. People will also start to crave that emotional resonance of human work, which I think ironically will strengthen much of the creative sector. So the real conclusion is that no single narrative actually encapsulates all these changes. They're so complex, multifaceted, and they're still unfolding. This magical nature of ChatGPT's image generator is, well, it's undeniable. It's completely captured imaginations everywhere. But with magic comes lots of pain, copyright battles, job losses, forced adaptations, and entire cultural trends being created overnight. For those that love art or champion original creation or rely on freelance illustration, it's probably a time of both anxiety and new possibilities. The ultimate shape of AI's role in creative culture is not predetermined. It's going to be subject to legal rulings, business strategies, and the collective values that us as a society adopt. Anyway, that's it for now. I hope you enjoyed the show. I'll see you next week. Please do share it to a friend, a colleague, put it in that Slack channel if you want people to start learning about AI in less than 20 minutes. Thanks, and see you next week.